Hi, and welcome to Dwelling Place. We hope you are encouraged and inspired as you listen to this message. Enjoy.
At the gathering earlier in the year, we framed it around this whole idea of deep roots, broad branches, and really felt like it was a bit of a season that we were moving into as a local church and as people, that we would be deepening our faith, that we'd be deepening our relationships, that we would be broadening our influence. And I spoke this message around seasons, and there was some good stuff in that message, but what I've found from it is there's been a number of conversations I've had with people that are asking further questions. It's just like, Doug, are you going to do a part 2 to that message? And I'm like, oh, I didn't really realise that it was a part 1. And so, but the questions being asked are things like, how do I even understand what type of season that I'm in? How do I respond to it? What's a season even look like? And all those types of things. It's one of those words that can just be so easily thrown around. It's just like, it's just a new season. And so what I thought that I would do today is I wanted to, I guess, take us a little bit more along that journey and hopefully be a little bit more practical to everyone in this room around this whole idea of seasons. I've obviously got insight into a lot of people's lives, and so it's not prophetic for me to understand that people are, and a lot of people are going through these changes within their life that are quite significant, or alternatively, they feel stuck and it's like nothing is changing. So this morning I've just entitled this message simply Navigating Seasons. I grew up in a local church called Twin Rivers, which was based down at Eagleby on the south side of Logan. It was on the north side of the Gold Coast, south side of Logan, north side of Gold Coast, south side of Logan. And the councils just kept, not because they wanted it, because they kept trying to give it to the other city. And so, it was an unbelievable place to grow up in. The opportunities that were given to young people to be able to participate in a local church, the engagement with local community. And so there were lots of great opportunities in there. And in this season that we were in, I was fortunate enough to be leading the youth ministry, but I was also employed there leading all the community services. So I was doing operations for the community services, and I probably had an interest in business and sort of like process and all those types of things, but no interest in websites, IT, database, anything like that. Boring. But what I found myself doing one day, and I was sort of scratching my head a little bit, was I was down in the basement, in the server room, looking at this server with all these leads, these cables going in, and it was all the patching that was happening from all the computers and all the phones and everything up throughout the offices. And little did I know that it was actually pretty easy to understand. And I start to make some mistakes, start patching things into the wrong areas. Then you start to figure it out. And so I'm doing all those things. And at the same time, I'm learning this new thing was on our desks, on our computers, and it was like Google Sites. And so we start playing around with this whole thing around Google Sites, and then I start editing websites, and it's like I have no idea really what I'm doing, but there was this opportunity and this season of learning that was going on. And what ends up happening is I end up finding myself a couple of years later working for this organisation which I've spoken about a number of times called Youth Alive. Now, at that stage, there was probably the equivalent of one full-time person, maybe 1.5. There were 2 of us working. And I was now the operations manager for this organisation, primarily leading events. I hadn't really led an event in my life. And so what I found all of a sudden was these skill sets and some of the things that I'd been learning, how to understand things, how to problem solve, some of the processes to get from one point to another, I all of a sudden am thrust into this new environment where I have to begin to figure out what the heck I'm doing. And so I'm finding myself up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning watching YouTube clips of how to merge videos together so that we can have a promo reel running. I'm finding myself making calls to people that I don't know because I essentially have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm playing around with the website because I had a bit of an idea of the website. I'm playing around with Photoshop, not because I knew how to use it, but because I knew that we needed an outcome. And I found myself going from this one season, which gave me a basic skill set and some things, and then I was thrust into this new season where there was this foundation of skill sets, but there was so much more being learned. My campus pastor at that stage, his name was Andrew Carter, and I'd been working at Youth Alive for about 3 months or so. I'd been at this church with Pastor Andrew for probably a similar amount of time. I wasn't on staff there, I just used one of the offices, and he comes up to me and he says, hey, Dougie. I'm like, yes, Pastor. He goes, I was praying about you last night. And he goes, God gave me 3 words for you. I'm like, okay. What are they? And he goes, the first one is this, rapid. The second one is this, rapid. And the third one is this, rapid. Rapid, rapid, rapid. And as time went on and I looked back, I found myself in this season of such rapid growth, rapid development, and rapid understanding of who I was as a person, but how God was utilizing me to continue to impact his kingdom and all the things that come from that. And as I look back on those things, I guess my point is this, that all of our seasons in life, whether we understand it or not, they all come together, they all culminate to continue to point us towards what God has got for us. The challenge is this. We don't necessarily like going through all the seasons of life to get to where God wants us to be. We often like, if we're going in social media terms, we watch everybody else's reels that have all the beautiful filters and everything else on it, and it's like, I want my life to look like theirs. Yet we sit back and it's like the screen won't even load. What season am I in? What's a season look like? How do I respond when I'm in a season that I don't even like? We can have dreams of a promised land, but we don't understand what season we're in now. We can think like this. Abraham left his home, yet he wandered long before the promise. Joseph dreamed a dream, yet he was imprisoned before the promise. The Israelites fled Egypt, yet they roamed in the wilderness before the promise. The dreams, the wanderings, and the promises are all seasons. Some seasons we shape ourselves, others come from circumstances that we didn't create, and yet others are sown by God's hand himself. However they come about, this is true that God is the God of all seasons. Even in the plot twists, the ones that are full of pain, misunderstanding, and confusion, ones that God doesn't necessarily create, he will ultimately use. Jim Rohn, an author and an entrepreneur, says this: you cannot change the seasons, but you can change yourself. So I wonder, and I ask us, whatever season we find ourselves in, there is an opportunity for us to take responsibility and make the most of those seasons. There's this story that begins in Genesis 37 of a young man named Joseph. Many of you might know that story, and Joseph is the youngest of his brothers. He's the favorite in the family. It's really an honored position to be in. And Joseph is there, favored by his father, but his brothers despised him. Joseph had this dream, and he began to declare this dream to his family. He was going to be in this position of power. He was going to oversee others, and he was quite upbeat about it. There's nothing like when God drops a dream in your heart and you begin to see what he might have for your life. But the brothers didn't like it, so what happens is They go out, they put him in a pit. They end up deciding, you know what, we can't just leave him here to die, so let's just sell him. They started to engage in some human trafficking. The Ishmaelites come along and they sell Joseph to these traders, these Midianite traders, and then they begin to go, and then they pass on and they sell Joseph to an Egyptian, Potiphar. He's an Egyptian officer. And here we find Joseph, and he's serving in this household, and he then gets seduced by Potiphar's wife. He decides to take off to find himself in prison, not just for a day or two, but for years. Then through interpreting a dream, Pharaoh sees, hey, I think that this guy can be useful within my life and this empire. So he brings Joseph out, sets Joseph up as the second in charge or the prime minister. Joseph leads them through this famine, and the story basically concludes with Joseph's family coming and bowing down to him. It's a crazy story of multiple seasons that see this fullness of life. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 says this: for everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. God's in every season, the rapid ones, the messy ones, and the exciting ones. The question I would ask you this morning is this: what season are you in? So how do I navigate seasons? The first thought is this: we need to recognize the season. Reflecting upon some of that message that I spoke in the gathering, God is a God of all seasons, not just the mountaintop seasons or the career advancement seasons or the graduation seasons. He's the God of all seasons. Genesis 8 says, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. He's not the God of all seasons. It wasn't seed time or harvest, cold or heat, summer or winter. He is the God of the and season. So he's the God of seed time and harvest, cold and heat. He's not the God of contemplation or acceleration. He's not the God of staying or going. He's the God of and. He is the God of planting and harvesting. He is the God of waiting and sending. Song of Solomon chapter 2 says, look, the winter has passed and the season of the singing birds has come. He is the God of all seasons. The challenge for us sometimes is we don't like to go through all seasons. Who are summer people? Oh, okay, we've got 3 summer people. Who are winter people? Oh, wow, I'm a spring person. So some of us don't like some seasons. I'd actually written this example and it played out yesterday perfectly, right before my eyes. I couldn't believe it was happening. We're at home and we're watching this TV series, Physical 100. It's just, anyway, it's a bit of a reality show. And because I'm so physically strong, I'm watching these guys and going, yeah, I can do that. And so we're there watching, and what I find is it started, then I'm doing some work, and then I hear one of our children go, how are we at this part in the show? To which the other child says, oh, the rest of it's boring. So I just fast forwarded it to this part. And the number of times we've been watching a movie or a show or something like that, and all of a sudden it starts like accelerating. It's like, how do we skip 45 minutes? It's because we don't like the boring stuff. Just get me to the good parts. And it's a little bit how we like to engage with God. God, I like this part. This dream, this promise, this is awesome. Man, let me stay here for a while. Let me just bask in the glory of who I'm going to be. Then there's this part. So, man, I can't believe God's using me like this. Man, the fruit in my life, the people I've been able to encourage, the promises that I've seen fulfilled, the abundance that He's poured over and above. This whole part here, let's just fast forward through it. But he's not the God of this season or that season. He's the God of all the seasons. We want God to fast forward and get us to the good part. But we need all the parts to be able to become all that God has called us to be. We need the different seasons. And God is a God of all seasons. We cannot exhibit a season of maturity without having a season of learning patience. We can't handle a season of authority without having gone through a season of faithfully serving. We can't enjoy a season of intimacy without understanding a season of embracing vulnerability. God is a God of all seasons. I would encourage you this morning, there's a bit of an activity that I'm not going to get you to do now, but I'd encourage you to do at a later stage. This is what I would encourage you to do if you want to discern the season that you're in. I would encourage you to get your phone or a notepad and ask yourself some of these questions. This would be the only disclaimer. You cannot respond to these questions unless you invite God sincerely into the conversation. Because the outcome of your responses is going to be very different if you're just using it and seeing it through you versus inviting God into the conversation. For example, what is frustrating me? This is a very good question to ask yourself if you're going to begin to identify the season that you're in. What is frustrating me? The challenge is this. I could sit back and I could go, my team, my leadership team, they're frustrating me. And if I don't invite God into the conversation with humility, the response of that ends up becoming quite accusational, and it becomes the problem of the team. If I ask a question, what's frustrating me, and I've got the lens of God and the Spirit of God working through me, maybe the outcome is vastly different. The response can be the same. My team are frustrating me. But maybe the response is more like this. Rather than it being attacking and accusational on them, maybe it's more like, man, I've got some development to go on. I've got some growth to do. There's some capacity in me that needs to be stretched. And I begin to invite God into understanding, allowing me to understand the season that I'm in. So I would just invite you to go, God, Holy Spirit, show me what you're doing. Allow me to see this through your eyes. These are the questions that I ought to ask myself and encourage you to ask yourself to help identify or discern the seasons that you're in. What is frustrating me? What fruit am I bearing? Where is my faith directed? Hopes, vision, possibilities. What am I feeling? Let's just remember feelings aren't bad if they're sort of like packaged around things. I think if we just focus and isolate just feelings, I think we'll get ourselves in trouble. But if you have it as a part of a broader package, I think it can be healthy. What's fading or growing in my life? What's God revealing to me? Whether that's through his word, whether it's in the faith community, whether it's in the circumstances of life. Then I'd write it down and then you pray, Holy Spirit, show me what you're doing. There may not be just one thing. It may not be one season. I understand people have work, people have children, people have friendships, people have study, people have all these different relationships. We could be going through many seasons at the same time. So hopefully that can help you get there. How do I navigate seasons? The second one is this. Embrace the in-between. Genesis 39:2, 39:3, 39:5, 39:21, 39:23 all have this phrase or something similar in them. The Lord was with Joseph. It seems like a simple phrase and it sounds so beautiful when we put it in the context of this part here, where he was dreaming, or when we put it in the context of this part here, where he's one of the highest in charge of Egypt. The problem that we find ourselves in is that this happened, this was the verse before the Lord was with Joseph 5 times. When Joseph was taken to Egypt, verse 1, when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. That's a pretty confronting statement. A man that is traded, human trafficked, enslaved. And the phrases and the language that come multiple times after it, the Lord was with Joseph. The awareness of God's presence and the success of his work was not in the dreaming or in the place of that palace. It was while he was being human trafficked. It's while he was in prison. This is what we might call Joseph's in-between moments, this in-between season. And I guess this is what we can take if our life is submitted to God and we find ourselves in some of these places. We can be encouraged this morning of this, that the Lord is with you. The Lord is with me. Many treat this in-between season, this time of uncertainty and unknown, as a bit of a waiting room. We use it to scroll, we use it to binge TV series, we use it to swipe, we use it for all these other purposes rather than to really hone in on what God is doing in us and through us. Abraham's wandering, Joseph's prison, and the Israelites' deserts were all these seasons of the in-between. Between that time of a promise being spoken and a promise being received. We had that gusty event a couple of weeks ago by the name of Alfred. Crystal's brother is named Alfred. He's going to cop it all the time from now on. Alfred, you were so annoying. I felt like you were coming along, but then you delayed, and it's just like... And we go through this because we had our birthday last week, so we're on this part where we're running up to the birthday, and so all of a sudden this Alfred comes on the scene, and it sort of throws us a little bit. We have to begin to reconsider what's going on and how we approach things, and we have to start thinking, okay, how are the people in the life of the church going to be? Who's in dangerous areas or spots? Like, hey guys, let's just get word out, let's reach out, make sure people are going to be okay, and if they're not, that they've got somebody that they can connect with. All the meantime, we lose phone reception and can't contact anyone, so we were pretty well useless through that time. But what we found was, on the lead-in, you start to get rattled a little bit, and then we lose power and phone reception and those things, and it's exciting for the first 6 hours. Hey kids, let's get a candle out. Remember those things? But then after 24, the novelty's wearing off. A couple of days, we start getting irritated. And we found ourselves, weirdly, we knew before it we were okay. We were very confident that after it we were going to be okay. But we found ourselves in this weird in-between season. In that mess, in that uncertainty, in that weird time, I prayed more. As a family, we probably connected more. I fundamentally think I probably found God more. And in reflection, that in-between time wasn't a wasted time. It sort of become like this new seed time. It was a bit of a realignment. We're a generation that hates delays. We've been spoiled by Amazon Prime. It's like order now and we'll receive it tomorrow. We hate delays. But that's not how God operates. God operates in a way where we need to embrace this in-between time. The question might be this: can we trust him when he's working and it's silent? I remember there was a young lady who was a part of one of the groups that I was leading, and she was really struggling in life. She was unemployed. She was dealing with depression, mental health. There was lots and lots of things going on in her life, and she was feeling very, very stuck. And she would ask questions like this: God, where are you? God, I don't understand why I'm here. I don't understand how this can have you involved with it. But in that time, I encouraged her. It was like, I understand these things are going on in your life and they're real. Can I encourage you to really maybe like try and stretch yourself and maybe go and volunteer somewhere? Like I know it's going to be a stretch. I know it's going to take a lot of courage, but can you organise to go and volunteer somewhere just once a week? That's all you need to do. If you can do a couple of hours, that would be great. Maybe get involved if that's too much. You're comfortable with where we go to church. Like maybe get involved and just do something simple, but it's going to give you a sense of responsibility and engagement. And she began to do it. And she began to get engaged. She began to get involved. She began to volunteer at a local charity. And we saw this life come back into her. It didn't seem big to me, but it was massive to her. And she began to find purpose in her life, and one season led to another, and she began to get healthier and she began to get engaged, and all of a sudden that in-between didn't seem so much like it was a detour in her life as much as it was a season of development in her life. If you find yourself in this in-between or this unknown, could I invite you to do a couple of things? Just pick one thing to stabilize your life. Pick one thing to stabilize the season that you're in. I'm telling you now, if on reflecting with our friend Alfred, if I'd made a decision earlier just to stabilize my life with a couple of things, I think our household would have been way healthier. It wasn't a disaster, but I got a bit grumpy. I dragged my feet a little bit. But if there was something, if there was some stability, if there were some things that I just anchored myself with, it could be as simple as this. Just commit to praying for like 3 minutes a day before you open up an app, unless it's the Bible app. Invite a friend or a family member to do a devotion with you or to share a scripture with each other. They don't have to be big things, but just something to anchor this season of the unknown. Final thing is this. How do I navigate seasons? We need to recognize where we are. We need to embrace the in-between. And the third one would be this, that we need to move with courage. This seems to be a bit of a repetitive theme that I'm coming across, particularly this year. Joshua 1 verse 9 says this, be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you. The Lord invites us to be courageous people and promises to be with us. As we went through our series, Jesus People Church, and we actually changed some of that language, and we are confident and we embrace this language, this phrase, we are a courageous people. We are a courageous people. You know, Joseph was in this compromising position, being seduced by somebody in a position of power. And it's funny, isn't it, when we read stories. This is why I love like The Chosen so much. House of David. There's these shows that are coming on, and we know that there's some creative license in them. But it brings this reality to these people and these stories. We can go through this thing and it's just like, oh yeah, Joseph, he got sold into slavery, he got passed on by one person to another. He serves in this house and the lady thought he was attractive, so she tried to hit on him and nothing really happened. He took off out of there and the guy wasn't happy, so he went to prison, and then a couple of years later, man, we can't imagine what that story would have been like. We can't imagine having all of our siblings turn on us so much that they would be happy enough to sell us to traders after sticking us in a ditch. And then those traders don't want you, so they sell you to the next lot. And then you find yourself being favored. All of a sudden you're serving in this household and it's like, you know what, I've actually sort of like, I'm doing okay now. Like, I'm not getting dragged along in a cage anymore. I'm not being handed from person to person. The house of Potiphar is sort of like, it's pretty nice, and maybe I'm not with my family, but this is okay. You know what the easiest option for Joseph would have been? As he's being seduced, as there's being a wink of an eye from Potiphar's wife, man, just play that game. Why would you want to create any more turmoil? It's just like, maybe I should just engage in this. She's going to keep it a secret. She's going to be happy. She'll be fine. And at least I'm still in this house. But the integrity within Joseph's heart, the loyalty towards God, said, I can't keep myself in this environment. I've got to run. That's a courageous decision. We sit there and we think that we would all do the same thing. Really? The great stories are great stories because usually they're so unique and nobody else would ever do it. Would you stand with me this morning? It took courage for Joseph to maintain his integrity. Why do we need courage in seasons? We need courage in seasons because seasons test us. In a planting season, it takes guts to sow when we can't see the harvest. We just kicked off this location in Logan. I'm telling you now, when you start something, you feel like such an idiot. Why the heck are we doing this? This is exhausting. What are we putting our families through? It takes guts, it takes courage to sow when you can't see the harvest. In the waiting season, it takes courage to trust when silence screams are louder than the answers. In the harvest season, it takes courage to steward God's blessing without just sort of coasting. In the seasons of life, we need to move with courage. They aren't spectator sports. As seasons shift, God calls us to move with them. Courage shouldn't just be seen as this cliche word. It should be seen as obedience on fire. Sometimes we want to be the bystanders, engaging the enjoyable seasons and skipping the sucky ones. But that's not who God has called us to be. Joshua 1:9 says this, be strong and courageous, for the Lord will be with you. He's the God of all the seasons. So how do we navigate seasons? We recognize the season, we embrace the in-between, and we move with courage. The beautiful thing to know with this is even though seasons change, even though circumstances change, the environment around us change, that the Word of God is very clear that Jesus does not change. Hebrews 13 verse 8 says, Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever. He is our anchor. He is the person that we can hold on to.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you were encouraged as you listened to today's message. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to see you again on Sunday. See you later, church.